Hey, listen, and welcome to A Link to the Filmcast. I'm your host, David Reese, on a show where we adventure across the realms of Hyrule and the silver screen. Today we're going to be looking at Venom, Let There Be Carnage, the second movie in the Venom series. But first, we're going to jump into our random Zelda wiki article. Today's article on the Zelda wiki is the Spear Moblin. And the picture they have by default is Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening Nintendo Switch. Your first Link's Awakening, you first encounter them in the forest, I believe. They throw javelins or spears at Link, and Link uses the shield to deflect them. Apparently, they first appeared in Four Swords. That's not right. They're in other games. There's different variants. Triforce Heroes, Four Swords. In a way, maybe you could even argue they're not listing the Moblins from Wind Waker, but like the guys that patrol the Forsaken Fortress in Wind Waker, I think those are Spear Moblins as well. But their examples are showing Echoes of Wisdom, Triforce Heroes, Minish Cap, Four Swords, Link's Awakening for the Switch. Fun next tier enemy, you start with your Bokoblins typically, or Moblins, and then this one uses your timing of the shield, so they're typically pretty early in the game, and this is how they start ramping up the enemy difficulty. Apparently there's a version in the Wand of Gamelon, the Philips CDI game, in the Faces of Evil. In those games, they're called the Moblin Spear Throwers. Those old school games that Nintendo probably wishes they never licensed and wish they never got made. Hope everybody is doing well. And today we're going to be jumping into Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. Or however you want to look at it. Call it Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. I remember this coming out in the summer of 2021. This is when movie theaters are opening back up, and one of the first summer movies that theaters were opening up for during COVID. And this wasn't my first movie after COVID or during COVID in theaters. That was reserved for Godzilla x Kong, or Godzilla versus Kong, which was like that March, I remember. March of 21. I remember going to a theater to see that. I know that was my first movie in theaters after COVID or during COVID, but doesn't disparage Venom as a movie. It already does that to itself. Nice little reminder, we're looking at the Sony Marvel movies right now, the expanded Spider-Verse. We're looking at the producer Avi Arad, who is attached to the Zelda movie, and seeing some other movies he's been attached to in the past, creating Marvel Studios before the Disney acquisition, producing other movies, kind of looking at some of them and seeing if we can get some glimpse or insight on what kind of movie we can expect from Zelda Endeavor, even though it's going to be in collaboration with Nintendo, and there's lots of hands in that pot. It's not going to be a singular person that gets all the credit for that. So we'll go in right away, and I kind of hinted with the tone of my voice that this movie is meh. I think they were held back with the whole PG-13 rating. They wanted to keep it PG-13. They didn't want to truly make Venom as gnarly as he is and show it. They wanted to keep it open to the teenage crowds. They didn't want it to be also super graphic as well. And they went the safe route where they kind of did the same thing or a similar thing, except got rid of the origin story. They reused the fact the enemy basically has the same, or the villain has the same powers as Venom. And they introduced this plot line of when the villains were kids, and the one Shriek has the ability to shriek. We kind of see that very early, like in the first 2 minutes of the film, basically, or during that abduction scene showing Shriek being taken away, that we're like, as the viewer, you're like, oh, okay, this is gonna come back to haunt Venom. This is gonna, why not come back to haunt him, because he hasn't really encountered her yet. But they also set up Detective Mulligan as a major character when he was young and scruffy, working up the career in police work, I guess, because he was a transport guy. So he has some connection to Shriek, as we are noticing. He might come back or have a role in the third movie as well. I haven't seen that one, full disclosure. But we do know the Venom movies, at least the first one, was pretty good about setting up the next one. At the end of the first movie, in the mid-credits scene, we get a scene of Eddie Brock getting an invite to meet a serial killer in prison, San Quentin. That's kind of how this movie starts, or kind of how Eddie's movie starts here. He meets with this Cletus Cassidy, and who's pretty crazy, and the whole point is that Detective Mulligan wants to try to get some additional information out, because there's still bodies that Cassidy has hidden that the families would like to be retrieved, which is fine. And Venom, through his photo-like memory and seeing all the crazy drawings in Cletus Cassidy's room, was able to basically show Brock where the bodies are hidden, and Brock relays that message to Detective Mulligan, who doesn't know how he did it. And probably for the best, because if someone told you some alien in their head that only you can see, or maybe not only you can see, but if there's an alien in your head that kind of talks to you, that might not be the best idea in trying to be a credible source. They kind of use this opening part of the movie when this stuff is going to show the bond between Eddie and Venom. Venom's soft spot for the chickens, or as us Zelda fans would call them, the cuckoos. Venom's been suffering cravings. He loves chocolate because there's a special chemical in brains and chocolate. We see Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen knows about Venom. Even though at the time of this movie, Stan Lee had passed, we still see Stan Lee, a little cameo. We see a little comics on display at the convenience store of Stan Lee in homage of him. Pretty run-of-the-mill start. Kind of what I would expect. Checking on the characters, see what they're doing, see what they're up to. We get the scene where Anne's engaged and shows Brock and Venom. And the fact that Venom is still alive is a secret. We see some story points with Cletus and Shriek, how they are. And there's really not much depth to Shriek, really, other than that she likes Cletus. And even though she was a kid when they took her, she still just yearns for him. Did it say? It's in 95. I don't know. If I was a kid and I went to prison, I guess that's all she knows, though. Hasn't been much interaction. She doesn't get to socialize at the prison. Also, I stand corrected. Venom came out in October of 2021. For some reason, I was remembering it as the summer. Don't come out, haters. I know haters are going to hate, but just want to throw that out there. But yeah, the PG-13 rating, Venom's kind of a softie. He can't go full bad guy because they want the audience to like Eddie Brock and Venom as a duo. They're an interesting duo in the sense that they inhabit the same body, the same person. And sometimes just to put a visual to Venom, they'll just have his head stick out of his back and just be his little floating CGI head talking to Eddie. That's fine. I wish they didn't go so soft on him. We get the whole thing about Cletus trying to blame his execution on Eddie Brock. I guess the whole plot of the movie, the story hinges on this, even though it's so fundamentally flawed, especially for the character Eddie Brock that we're supposed to know his deal. The Cletus puts the burden on Eddie, like, thanks to you publishing where the bodies are, they decided to move forward with the death sentence and execute me. So this is your fault. And it's a fault in Eddie's personality that I guess Cletus is exploiting, because Eddie's not the one that decided he should get the death sentence. Cletus did a bunch of heinous acts. He was a killer. Hit a bunch of bodies. Crazy. He's been found guilty through a court of law. It's really not Eddie's fault. Cletus writes that weird postcard inviting him to watch his execution, which... I guess he's crazy. You can't think of... He's a serial killer. You can't try to think of their reason all the time. Even though I know a lot of people try. But this is where they have to have this in here so Eddie has a chance for carnage to happen. Cletus biting him, getting the blood. And then from there, the whole movie's it had a strong start as pretty elementary, reintroducing the characters, setting up a villain. Even though the villain's motives aren't for anything logical. It's just because they're evil and revenge, I guess, for being wronged by the good guys. It was nice they explored Venom and Eddie being separated, not being together for the second part of the movie. That was nice to see how they would act and how things actually ramped up while they were separated. So as the viewer, you're like, oh, hopefully Carnage doesn't catch up to Eddie because Eddie doesn't have Venom right now. But it never really happens until Venom and Eddie are reunited that they encounter Carnage. So that whole threat doesn't really happen. There's the church conflict. I know I'm kind of digging into like the plot points of this movie, but I do want to say like the production, the CGI is good. The humor is there. They did more humor than they had to. Made it enjoyable. This is truly a popcorn flick. And then we get the long drawn out church fight, which is just fun, gorgeous to look at, really cinematic, super blockbuster like. There's some parts of it that didn't come out looking the best, but they were few and far in between. They weren't every scene or every shot, I should say. There was a few shots that looked like they kind of cheated out, but fight has some open ends. Like we never get closure on Detective Mulligan. At the end, we kind of see his eyes change different colors and kind of allude that there's going to be a third movie with him involved. So I'm curious to see what that will look like. This movie did pretty well. Here in the States, the movie grossed $214 million. The budget was $110 million, so it made its budget, which, if you know much about box office numbers, is pretty much you need to make 2 times your budget in order to turn a profit, because depending on the movie and the company, they also spend about the same amount of the budget to advertise and marketing. So if it was $110 million to make, they probably spent $110 million for marketing and advertising. So 220 would be the threshold to make a profit, and they did that. And it was also kind of a big deal because it was during COVID era. Everything was on the fritz. Are people going to go back to theaters to see movies? And apparently people came out for this one. I did. I saw this after work one day. I saw this movie in theaters. It was fun. It's a fun movie. And that gets us to the Rotten Tomatoes and the other part of this bag, which is critics thought the movie was rotten while the audience loved it. Haven't talked about it too much on this podcast, but a lot of the movies I like tend to have high audience reviews and low critic reviews. So Rotten Tomatoes right now shows the critics giving this a 58% and the audience score being 83%. So there's a 25% difference between the audience and the critics. The critics say that this movie leans into the silliness too hard, where the audience pretty much says it's full of action and fun fight scenes, plenty of comedy, and it's everything they're looking for. Which isn't wrong. It's a fun movie. I actually hope they keep making movies like this. I would like to see them take more risks, try doing different things. I like how they took the risk on other Marvel films and started doing the multiverse. But now that's been so overdone. I'm hoping they go a new direction or they try something else. I also think there's a nice bow on this movie where Venom wants to eat heads, brains the entire movie. He finally gets to at the very end. And then the comedic ending where they just end the movie on a beach, and then we get our Far From Home Spider-Man kind of tease after the credits. Great movie. Critically, the storyline is pretty straightforward. Nothing too special. I liked it. The production value was good. And that's the thing about some movies. If the production value is good and it's fun to watch, the story, you're just along for the ride, whether or not the story is vibing or not. I guess you got to have some sort of story. But if you're getting the right amounts of action and getting some laugh lines, don't regret watching the movie. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, I have a debate we need to settle. And we're back, and I'm just basically going to bring up a trend right now, a meme, and it got me thinking about Zelda, and I want to just throw it out there into the void and see what happens. There's a meme right now, which is a debate of who would win in a fight, 100 unarmed men versus one gorilla. And critics on both sides says 100 men could probably team up and take the gorilla, where proponents for the gorilla argue that gorillas are so strong and the coordination of 100 men to effectively take it down wouldn't be enough. That's up for debate. But I was also thinking of it as like a battle arena situation in Breath of the Wild. And I don't know how far ROM hacking has gotten with Breath of the Wild. I know there's like character model replacement, so you can play as Linkle in Breath of the Wild if you emulate. I don't know how prevalent like editing the map and editing monsters is really in the Breath of the Wild emulation, but I thought it would be cool if somehow that someone got or in the Colosseum, for example, they got 100 Lionels. And I know they have different colors and rankings. Maybe just do a random distribution of their difficulties. And I'd love to see someone who's really like frame perfect with Breath of the Wild. You know what I'm talking. The guys that can do all the fancy jumps and perfect timing with the arrows and get the right shots. I'd love to see Link versus 100 Lionels. And then probably escalate it to Link versus 100 Golden Lionels. I want it to get to the point where you're thinking about, can the inventory Link hold, deliver enough damage to even attempt to defeat 100 Gold Lionels? Because at a certain point, you can only carry so much, and it can only deliver so much damage before it breaks. And the Lionel's health are fixed. Are you able to do it? That'd be a great little experiment. I'd love to see. I'd also love to see Link versus like 100 Hinoxes. Link versus 100. Wouldn't like 100 Calamity Ganons be fun? Still the same arena, but there's 100 Calamity Ganons just causing chaos under the castle. Ganondorfs, if you're talking Tears of the Kingdom. Link versus 100 anything would be fun. And I'm talking about in the main game universe. Because I do know in like the Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, you can do like Link versus hundreds of Bokoblins and Lizalfos and Taloses, but the mechanics are different. The health statuses are different. It's really scaled, so it can be Link versus 100 way easier than in the base game where one Lionel is enough of a challenge. Can you imagine adding 2 zeros? If something like that exists and I haven't been able to find it yet, send me a link and I'd follow up with it in the next episode. But if you have questions about Zelda, life, movies, whatever you want, feel free to send them in to ZeldaFilmcast@gmail.com. But that'll be it for this episode. If you like what you heard, tell a friend and leave us a review. Follow me on X @ZeldaFilmcast. And next time we'll be watching Morbius. Thanks for listening, and as always, may the Triforce be with you.